much. In this video, I'm going to do a recap and build review of the Serpent SRX8 GTE long wheelbase. So as I normally build any car, I take a bunch of notes. That way I can tell y'all my feelings on the build. So let's get started. So the first bag was the diff bag. There's really no issues with it. The instructions weren't clear on order for installing the pins, but other than that, not too bad. The second bag that I did was the solid axle bag. I ended up with 2 extra shims and 1 O-ring in a bag, and didn't know where they went. There's no indication of that. Also, there's no notifications to use Loctite, but I definitely did on the threads that went into metal, and that's going to be basically the theme of the whole build. Like it didn't quite say, hey, use Loctite here, even though you're going into metal. That's just something that you should know and kind of do. So the next bag was actually bag 1, and my gripe with that bag 1 was the control arms for the rear assembly. The plastic was really soft compared to every other brand I've had experience with. It's actually, like, in my opinion, the plastic quality on the Serpent is probably the lowest that I've ever seen on an RC. Lots of flashing, just wasn't the best quality for such an expensive vehicle. Everything else was amazing, just the quality of the plastic, the flashing, the molding, like design just didn't seem just up to par. So definitely, when you're installing the inserts into the control arms, there's a bunch of small screws, so be careful when you install those so you don't strip anything. Step 7.1 shows a droop screw, but doesn't call out the size or anything like that. The droop screw, let's see if we can see it here. So the droop screw's over here. It's kind of brownish, bronze in color. There's only 2 in the bag, and there's hexes on both ends, so that way you can adjust it from this side or the bottom. So same thing from previous steps, no real mention of using Loctite when you're going into metal. Bag 2, the differential inserts into the transmission. They're a pain to install. I ended up doing it at least 3 or 4 times just to see how to install it, ease of installation. And it's just, in my opinion, the design is flawed, and getting the insert into the position is not user-friendly. So in my opinion, this is not a quick access differential, front or rear. I had to loosen every screw in the transmission in order to get the diff inserts with the differential in. So yeah, one of the biggest flaws in the design of this car, in my opinion. No mention of using Loctite. Seems the gear mesh seems extremely tight in some spots. It did say, you have to run it maybe 1 or 2 hours and it'll kind of wear in and run in properly. The extra shim I had from the solid axle bag, I ended up using that for step 10.1. So it's the shim that goes on this pinion gear. on this side. So I had to use that from a previous bag. All right, so bag 3, there's some rubber sealed bearings, and I recommend, you pop the seals off, clean out the grease, and relube with oil. So that made a huge difference. No mention of using Loctite in places. Usually the notch on turnbuckles indicates left hand thread, but on this particular car, it mentions right hand thread, so take note of that. A tip is start the turnbuckles, get them kind of even on both sides, and then install the turnbuckle onto the chassis and then adjust it while it's on the chassis. And I noticed that even though the plastic is soft, the whole rear assembly is much more rigid compared to the X-Ray. Like the twisting, there's not a lot of twisting that can happen. I think the X-Ray, just the way it's designed, there's a lot of flex back there that I didn't quite like. So what I noticed on the rod ends have kind of a small side and a large side, and you're supposed to install all the balls from the large side, but when you have something like this where it's flanged and it has a ball, you can only install it from one side, especially because all these molds are the same. So this one side is really stiff because I had to install it from the small side in order for the orientation to work. And so unfortunately that's causing binding. I'm hoping that will end up breaking in a bit and loosening up after some use. All right, so bag 4, no mention of the droop screw on the front, but it's the same as it was in the rear. Brown, bronzish in color, it has hexes on both sides. No mention of Loctite on screws going into metal. Bag 5, no mention of Loctite. I had to loosen the transmission screws in order to get the diff insert to sit properly. My sway bar mount, part number is 601008. This part up here, this piece here, the thread was messed up, so I ended up having to order a M4 tap, and I chased the thread and it's all good and everything worked out. It just looked like there's leftover masking material from the anodizing process, and that just ended up preventing the screw from going in. So once I chased the thread, it was perfect. The left side anti-roll bar ball is tight, and that's due to the fact that the rod end has a big side and a small side, and I had to use the small side in order to install it. So for that reason, it's kind of tight. Let's see. Bag 6, no issues. The turnbuckles, as I said before, get them kind of even, get a few threads started, get it on the chassis, and then adjust it. It makes your life a whole lot easier. And use Loctite when going into metal. Bag 7, same thing. No mention of using Loctite when screws are going into metal. So, and that's the central assembly here. Let's see. Bag 8, step 26.1. I had to trim material on the servo saver in order to get the two pieces together. Step 28, the balls can only install in one position due to the flange, and I had to install from the small side, and because of that, the ball is binding. It's on the left side over here. You can use pliers to squeeze the rod in to loosen it up. That didn't quite work for me. And then use Loctite on screws going into metal. Bag 9, battery holders are extremely soft, very soft plastic. So when you're installing the really small screws that go in there, be careful so you don't strip it out. There's multiple spacers for the servo to adjust the height on the servo. So make sure you use the right ones. I just happen to use the right ones because I didn't see the thinner ones. So I have a very small gap between the servo and the chassis. That's what you want. There's an antenna tube holder. I mean, they didn't really give a lot of space to fit your ESC and receiver, so I ended up having to remove it in order for the ESC to fit. And then use Loctite on anything going into metal. Next was the shocks. The bladder shocks, I always have trouble with them. They're a pain to me. You know, just be patient. You know, I probably built the shocks 3 times before I got the hang of it and got them all kind of even to have even rebound. Seals on the bottom of the shock, they recommend using the shock fluid itself to lubricate it. I've been taught to use grease, so that's what I did, and you know, I've never had a shock fail on me if I use, you know, new seals and grease, so I went with that. In the manual, it doesn't say what size piston or spring goes where. It says on the setup sheet to use the 1.1 piston, but I didn't want to take it off the parts tree and then trim it and then not get it perfectly round. There are 4 pistons. There are 6 by 1.2 millimeter holes that were already off the tree that didn't need any trimming or anything, and they were more round, so I ended up using those. The front lower shock mounts, I had issues with both of mine. I had to use the M4 tap that I got earlier for the sway bar piece here to chase the threads multiple times in order to get the screws to actually go in. So that was a big problem. Use Loctite on anything going into metal. And don't be worried, there is like a little bit of play on the shocks on the top. So that's gonna be normal. Bag 10, the only thing, my issue is they didn't give you a height, so I just guessed. I guess, I mean, it's gonna be different for whatever body you're gonna run, so just put it wherever. Once you get your body, adjust it as needed. Same thing for bag 11, you know, didn't have any place, it didn't tell you how tall to keep the post, so I just kind of guessed on that. You know, I really dislike this battery hold down and just the way it's designed. And the car is beautiful, it's elegant, and I think just the battery holders were just like an afterthought. Seems kind of cheap compared to the X-Ray. So that's just my opinion. You know, it could be perfectly fine. I just feel like, you know, aesthetically it doesn't seem to be that great. So I think, you know, this is a great value RC, considering, you know, the pricing. You know, all the Serpents are priced accordingly to the market. However, you know, the aluminum bits that come with it are I mean, I don't see how they're able to keep the pricing as competitive as they can. So I think like the Serpent would be great for someone who's looking for a lot of value in the RC. Um, I mean, it probably has like $250, maybe $300 worth of aluminum upgrades on any other brand. So I mean, I think the steering hubs, the C hubs in the front, the rear hubs, those are all aluminum. You know, those are probably $50, $60 upgrades from any other brand. The center gear, the mount itself is aluminum. That's usually not the case. I mean, yeah, so I mean, definitely worth the money. Aluminum caps for the shocks. Usually those are plastic. If I were to pick one, it'd be very difficult to pick one between the X-Ray and the Serpent. They're both great cars. In my opinion, I think the X-Ray has a little better quality and a little better design. That's a little bit more user-friendly. I think if you want something a bit more unique, I think the Serpent is a bit more unique in the sense that it's got a lot of upgrade parts, better value in that sense. I mean, it's got the rear diffuser, that's an option part for the X-Ray. It's got upper braces that are carbon fiber. I mean, it's a pretty cool car for the amount of money you're spending. So I mean, I'm always one to look at value. I think the designs are very similar. They'll probably perform very similar. And I mean, at my level, at most people's level, it's probably not going to matter which car you get. I know someone had commented on the X-Ray having problems with the rear diff. So maybe reliability issues with that, or you know, that might be an issue. I haven't heard anything about the Serpent from anyone local or online when I did some research. So, you know, if it was up to me, I would probably get the Serpent just because of the value of the RC, getting so many upgraded parts for the same cost. I have maybe 2 gripes about this car that are significant. Other things are kind of small, but I hate the diff inserts and the way they install. It's a pain. It's a bad design. I wish they got rid of it and made it a little easier to get the diffs in and out. That's one of my biggest gripes. The other gripe is the rear mesh for this differential, like, it's kind of wonky. It's not as smooth as the X-Ray, but other than that, you know, that should hopefully wear in according to Serpent. But other than that, I mean, they're both great cars. I don't think you can go wrong with either one, whichever you decide to get. So, but thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed my review and what I thought about this car. Like I said, I don't think you can go wrong with the Serpent, whether you get this one or you don't get the long wheelbase one. I think you'd definitely enjoy it. I had a great time building this. So I appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned for more. I've got another build coming up. It's a personal build of mine, which I'm super excited about. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Thanks.